Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching a movie on what if Kid Naruto gained nanotechnology. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The year is 2020 and the world has been entrenched in a deadly conflict for the past 5 years. The vast oil reserves discovered deep in the Pacific were the driving force behind this conflict. The United States was the first to build oil rigs, but nations such as Japan, Russia, China, and others soon followed. They didn't know how it happened, but slowly over time the heated disputes became a full-blown war. There were 3 factions in total, the first of which was America's Union. This was a union of North and South American nations. The second group was the European powers, who were not as united as the American Union, but still worked toward the same goal of keeping Europe a world superpower. The only nation that did not join them was the Russian Federation, which allied itself with the Asian Collections, a group of Asian nations. The war's first decade was a bloodbath on the seas and in the air. During this period, it was demonstrated that the naval and aviation might of the Asian Collection and the America's Union were equal. In a bet, Europe launched a massive operation called Fall Liberty, with the goal of airlifting highly trained spec ops onto American soil and seizing key positions. They were told to keep them until the invasion force arrived. The 46th Elite Paratroops, made up of highly trained soldiers, was tasked with infiltrating an American military research facility in the hopes of obtaining some voluminous data. They discovered something they had never seen before. Oh my goodness! Do you read this? When asked, a soldier was going through the intelligence they had just obtained. Yes, I see. Did they really think this would work? I mean, without killing the subject of the experiment? Another person inquired. A living one, yes. But I don't know. In this day and age, anything is possible. Even a living weapon. He responded. What they had discovered was research and data on a project called Rebirth, which was really just a code name. The European invasion was a disaster. It started off well, but they didn't expect Canadian forces to come to their aid. The European forces were forced to retreat after 2 months of fighting. In the public eye, Europe suffered a massive defeat, but from a military standpoint, Europe triumphed. Do it. How could you have allowed this to happen? They now have all of the data for the Rebirth project, yelled an enraged American general. They discovered after the invasion that their enemies had taken everything related to that project. Sir, we were caught off guard, but please give us some more time so we can get the project back on track, a researcher responded. The general laughed. It's too late. The president has sabotaged the project. This project is no longer funded. He said this as he walked away. True, billions of dollars were invested in it, and it fell into enemy hands. A one-man army project. Gone in an instant. European researchers wasted no time in resurrecting the Rebirth project. The project was renamed Heracles, which is a fitting name for a weapon like this. They tested for the next 5 years, but all test subjects failed. The subject died before the small nanochips fused with their minds because the mental stress was too much for them. Then they tried a new approach, implanting the chips before the subject was even a baby. They accomplished this by creating a human out of the best DNA strands in the world. The project's offspring was named Reiner, but he had no last name. He was the most intelligent and powerful human. The project was initially successful, but it was abandoned due to the massive amount of resources required. He was the only one of his kind. There is only one living weapon. He could create an entire army from nothing. The nanochips in him were not ordinary chips. Instead, they were programmed to communicate with his biological body. It gave him the ability to transform into small nanochips, invisibility, and complete invisibility to any type of radar. He could also use these chips to construct structures such as entire buildings, massive weapon installations, and more. His imagination was the little to his chips. On the battlefield, he had become a terror. Stories about a lone soldier who appears only to create an army out of nothing and destroy his enemies. Another application for his chips was to decompose organic matter. He could use them to decompose his enemy's organic matter, as well as learn everything his victim had learned in his life. A true nightmare. Get on with it. He's nearly there. If we don't stop him here, we're all screwed. A soldier yelled. I'm going as fast as I can. There you have it. The man responded. They were going to kill that monster today. Is this going to work? A soldier was asked. I believe it should. The EMP is fused with the first proton cannon, which not only has the effect of shutting down all electronic devices, but also fires a more accurate and high-energy beam at the target. With just one hit from this, he'll be nothing but a memory. Reiner, according to what they were told, had gone insane. After all that he has witnessed, who wouldn't? He's arrived. Look. A man yelled. Reiner stood in the distance, his eyes filled with hatred for the enemy fortress. What makes them think they can kill me? So, give them a taste of their own medicine. When he raised his hand, a cannon the same size and shape as him began to form right next to him. He just made that cannon out of nothing. Rapid fire. The cannon then began to fire. Reiner also fired his cannon. Both beams met in the middle, but there was a problem. Reiner quickly scanned the center's rising energy. His eyes widened and he tried to move away, but he was drawn in by the rising energy's pull. Who knows where that portal leads? In his mind, he cursed. He was sucked in before he could do anything. Death Forest. In the middle of the night, an 8-year-old Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was practicing in the Forest of Death. Why, you might ask? His so-called father had just announced that his sister would be the Namikaze clan's heir. Naruto did not like it, and why should he? Damn it, it was his birthright. He was the oldest child, not his younger sister. At the very least, he was the Uzumaki clan's heir, right? Wrong. His 4-year-old brother was also announced as the Uzumaki clan's heir on the same day. This irritated Naruto to no end. Because of his sister's 9-tailed fox, he was always neglected. The only thing he had was his soul, and what a bitch the fox's soul was. He was always talking about how much fun he was going to have killing him and all that good stuff. Naruto had to train in secret because his parents did not approve of him outperforming his sister or brother. He was quite strong himself, having mastered his father's Rasengan and even completed it by incorporating his chakra affinities into it. He was still attempting to decipher the Raishin no Jutsu. Nobody knew what was going on. He was currently cutting leaves to gain more control over his wind affinity. Those to me's. Giving away my birthright like that. Well, you already know I don't give a damn. He was cut off by a small portal that opened up, revealing a man in his 20s who was badly injured. He was covered in deep cuts. Aw. Damn. I'm not sure. I'm going to do it. He said this before turning to face Naruto. He paused for a moment. He knew he was going to die, but he could pass on his powers to this boy. He needed someone, anyone, even if it was a child, to carry on his legacy. Do you want power, boy? He inquired while coughing up blood. Because of the portal, most of his nanochips were rendered inoperable, and those that were working couldn't keep up with the injuries. Power? What kind of authority? Naruto inquired. Naruto could sense the man's aura of power, but he lacked chakra. The man simply raised his hand, and nanochips appeared on it. This is the power you will be given. Living nanochips that will obey your commands, he stated. Naruto had no idea what nanochips were, but he could tell they were alive just by looking at them. He could tell they were made to do a lot of things. He was about to ask how to use them and other specifics when the man spoke up. Don't worry. Once you get them, you'll know how to use them. And everything I know. That includes what they can do. The man responded that he was losing blood quickly. Alright, I'll take you up on your offer. Naruto responded. Alright. Now come here. This may hurt a little. The man responded. He extended his hand and placed it on Naruto's brow. Then he commanded all the living nanochips into the boy with all his might. Naruto felt small chips smaller than the atom itself enter his skin and enter his brain. He screamed for a while, but then he remembered the man. Reiner was the name of the man, a test subject who went insane after witnessing the horrors of war. Naruto witnessed the man's involvement in the war. It was nothing like the wars they had here, but Naruto saw something else beyond the horrors of war. The arsenal. Naruto had become a walking library of advanced weapons unrivaled in the elemental nations. He reasoned that by doing so, he would demonstrate their errors. He could make something with this. Yes, with this, I can build a nation. No, an empire. Perhaps I can begin at the ruins of Uzushiahakure and resurrect the true Uzumaki clan, one that does not abandon their family. With that in mind, he changed into tiny partials and drove home. Naruto planned to first obtain the forbidden scroll of sealing, then copy any and all Uzumaki and Namikaze jutsu, but then something occurred to him. The Kyuubi, he was well aware that his nanochips could decompose anything living, but what about a soul? He considered it, then closed his eyes, only to open them a few seconds later to see Kyuubi's soul staring at him with hatred. Are you here to let me eat you alive, or are you here to demand something? Inquired the demon. Kyuubi. I've come to take your soul. Naruto stated unequivocally. When he said that, he raised his hand, and thousands of nanochips poured out. He grinned. Well, it appears that with the Uzumaki healing and the nanochips healing, they are made quickly. It's only been a few hours, but I can already feel thousands upon thousands of them in me. The Kyuubi growled. He had no idea what the boy was doing, but he could feel his soul and whatever little chakra he had left being destroyed and consumed. Damned you, boy. Once we meet, I will kill you in hell. The fox yelled. He could see the boy's grin. He'd lost, and it was to a boy. The fox vanished that day. Naruto approached the cage and ripped the seal off, causing it to fade. It had no effect because there was nothing in the cage. Naruto had dispatched the fox. Where his father had failed, he succeeded. He returned his attention to the other tasks that needed to be completed. First, the forbidden sealing scroll. He had no choice but to do it himself. He easily crept into the Hokage Tower. The tower's security was laughable. It was so simple to avoid the guards because most of them were sleeping. The trap seals were extremely visible. Who on earth is in charge of security here? He pondered. He entered the room where the scroll was kept. He slowly pushed open the door. There it was, the sealing scroll. With nothing to keep it safe. Naruto raised his hand, and the scroll was quickly dissolved by his nanochips. Everything on the scroll was now in his head. His first task had been completed, and it was now time for the second, which he would have to do later. He disintegrated into tiny fragments and reappeared in his room. He then directed some of his nanos to the clan library to begin copying all of the jutsu. He would have to wait until tomorrow until they were finished, as there were many of them. He was lying in his bed, wondering what else he could do. I wonder if I can change my DNA to create some kind of bloodline. I've heard that the Uzumaki have another bloodline besides the chakra chains, but it hasn't been seen in at least 1,000 years. I'm curious what it could be. He went to bed with that thought in his head. Naruto awoke the next morning and dispatched a few more nanos to speed up the process. Meanwhile, Jiraiya, the legendary Toad Sage, was conversing with his former student Minato Namikaze. They discovered the missing seal scroll a few hours before. They didn't know who did it, but they knew it was stolen. The prophecy has changed, according to Minato the Toad Elder. He stated. What had changed, Minato wondered. Were Kasumi and Ichigo not the ones who would bring the world peace? What exactly does it say? He inquired. The Elder Toad said, a boy shall receive power from a different world, and bring forth an empire of unrivaled might. I don't understand, neither of your children have power from a different world. So, how about Naruto? Does he have anything similar? He inquired. I don't think so. He doesn't even have ninja training. Minato stated. Wait a minute, what? Are you saying that neither you nor Kushina have trained Naruto? Jiraiya inquired sternly. No, we needed to train Kasumi and Ichigo because they will bring peace. Minato responded. Jiraiya sighs and shakes his head. Minato, I am dissatisfied with you. How could you abandon your son solely because of a prophecy? And now the prophecy has shifted, and neither of your two children will bring peace. Now you're dealing with a neglected son. Jiraiya explained. While those two were talking, Naruto dashed out of the village and towards the ruins of Uzumaki. He was relieved that no one had noticed him. Otherwise, his escape would have been difficult. 3 days later. Naruto has been missing from the village for 3 days, and the Leaf has been searching high and low for him. It wasn't until Minato went to check on Naruto that they discovered he was missing. Minato realized his error, not to mention the possibility of Naruto becoming an enemy. When Kushina discovered Naruto had left, she went completely insane. She went out on her own to look for him. The two siblings, on the other hand, were unconcerned. It didn't matter to them whether he was present or not. Meanwhile, Naruto had just arrived on the island that held Uzumaki remains. To his surprise, there were people living here, and even more surprising, some of them were Uzumakis. At the very least, I won't have to start from scratch. He pondered. There were about 5 other Uzumaki families, as well as about 50 civilian families, some of whom were former ninjas. He approached the Uzumaki families and posed numerous questions to them. They were surprised that he was an Uzumaki, and they were even more surprised when he told them he was going to rebuild the village. When they asked him, all he did was construct a structure large enough to house everyone. When they asked how he did it, he showed them his nanochips, which enabled him to do many things. First, he built a few houses for the families, and then he began to build factories, which were manned machines created by his nanos that allowed for the production of some resources. He did, however, require more people, such as clans, civilians, and, if possible, more Uzumakis. He began by looking towards the Mist Village. He'd heard that a civil war was being waged against bloodline users. He'd get a boost if he could persuade some of these bloodline users to join his village. While he's at it, he might be able to find some civilians as well. He was going to look for missing nins to recruit in order to find more ninjas. He desired a modern military similar to that of the other world, but he was no fool.
He was well aware that a shinobi was a valuable asset in this day and age, but a modern military would still outperform a shinobi in large-scale warfare, because, unlike a shinobi, a modern military relied on ordinary citizens.
Anyone who met the requirements could participate. He had taken a look around the island and discovered that it was larger than he had anticipated. There was also a nearby island that was just as large as the main one. He had handwork to do. After all, he had heard the saying Roman wasn't built in a day from that Reiner guy. After 7 years. Naruto has been trying to rebuild Uzumaki for 7 years. Naruto had modeled it after Tokyo, a city he remembered seeing in Reiner's memories. According to memories, it was once a megacity of more than 13 million people, but during the war, it became a key target and was destroyed by naval bombardment. His Tokyo, or Neo-Tokyo, had only 4 million people instead of 13 million, making it less crowded than the original. Naruto realized that teaching people the technology would be nearly impossible, so he implanted a single nano in their minds to make things easier. That nano's job was straightforward. It taught the brain the technology in about a day, but the host would be sleeping the majority of the time. Naruto was able to use this to transform the once ruined Uzumaki into a megacity. Because of the medical technology Naruto introduced to hospitals, which saved many lives, the population grew quickly, and the child mortality rate was at an all-time low, thanks to the Uzu Police, a peacekeeping force of Neo-Tokyo and other towns in the Whirlpool country. Naruto, on the other hand, had created a completely separate city just a few miles away from Tokyo. This city was modeled after Kyoto, and it also served as the new Uzumaki. Neo-Tokyo and the new Uzumaki were as different as night and day. While Tokyo had technology on every corner and was massive, the new Uzumaki was smaller and contained less technology. Naruto desired that the Whirlpool country's capital, New Uzumaki or Neo Uzumaki, be surrounded by nature. There were a few rivers, some housing complexes, clan compounds, and the Azukage's palace or court, whatever you want to call it. Naruto was busy at work. Well, paperwork was still not beaten despite all the technology. Damn it. I'll beat you one day. He pondered. He was thinking about many things as he worked, the first of which was that Whirlpool was ready. Its military might remain unrivaled, though to be fair, no one knew Whirlpool was up and running because it was mostly kept a secret, and it helped that no one really went to Whirlpool, and since it had whirlpools protecting the island, it was even better. He didn't notice a figure walking behind him as he worked. The figure then proceeded to hug him from behind. Come on, Naru-kun. Why can't you just drop this paperwork and come hang out with me? The figure stated. Fu-chan, you know I can't leave this job or else God knows what will happen. Naruto said to the girl with the mint green hair. He met Fu a year ago and discovered she was the host of the Seven-Tailed Beast, but unlike the Nine Tails who despised his host, the Seven Tails didn't mind and had bonded with Fu as a result. Naruto came across Fu while searching for more shinobis. He hadn't expected to come across her, but she did live outside of the village because most of the village despised her. Naruto thought she was very cute despite living in horrible conditions. So he invited her to accompany him to his homeland. She initially claimed that she would be used as a weapon, but Naruto assured her that this would not be the case. He told her what he was doing back at Whirlpool and assured her that no one would see her as a monster, but as a savior. After all, his people had faith in him, and almost everyone knew that the Uzumakis were fuinjutsu experts. They became friends and formed a strong bond over the course of a year, and Naruto finally grew a pair and asked her out about 2 months ago. He was afraid of rejection, but she surprised him by saying she liked his as well. Why can't you just use Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and let your clones do it, Naruto? Then there was silence. Naruto gave her a blank stare before approaching her and kissing her on the lips. You are a genius, Fu-chan. He yelled, then cloned about 4 people and told them to get to work. He then grabbed Fu's hand and dashed outside towards the gardens, yelling, I did it. I have finally overcome paperwork. Many people laughed at their ruler's antics. Naruto was the ruler of a nation, but he was also a damn good comedian. The Leaf Village. A few shinobi stood in front of the 4th Hokage, along with his wife and 2 children. Well, the youngest, since his eldest was nowhere to be found. As you are all aware, Whirlpool is back up and running, and according to our reports, they are. Now I'm tasking all of you to go there and form an alliance, and Kushina, as the Uzumaki clan's leader, you'll be able to help because Whirlpool belongs to the Uzumaki clan. Dismissed, he said, and everyone exhaled. Mom, do you think we'll find more Uzumakis now that Whirlpool is back up and running? Kasumi inquired. Kushina smiled, hoping to find more Uzumakis as well. I sincerely hope so, dear. She stated. Her daughter smiled, hoping to find more family. She had no idea how correct she was. When they arrived at the village gate, they were greeted by others. After a brief inspection, they all begin to head east towards a port that will lead them to Whirlpool. However, none of them noticed a Beret of A-100 AWAC. This is a Russian AWAC, but it's supposed to fly for the first time in 2017, so deal with it. Flying high in the sky. It was tasked with spying on the Leaf Village and happened to overhear them. Sir, it appears that this team is on its way to Whirlpool. Orders? Asked a man on board the plane. Please forward the report to the Naval Department and Naruto-sama. According to the officer. The man nodded and followed instructions. Department of the Navy. The sea around Whirlpool country was guarded not only by whirlpools, but also by the Navy. The Naval Department is in charge of dealing with any naval issues concerning national security, such as external threats. The Navy is made up of both old and new ships, including the Udaloy II and Sovremeny destroyers, a few Taoe-8 supply ships, and 2 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, with a Ford-class in the works. They had 2 Yamato-class battleships, which helped because they were actually super battleships, displacing around 60,000 tons. A few Wasp-class amphibious assault ships and Type 071 LPDs were present. They had 6 Akranoplan. I recommend you look it up. It's a really cool one. The Navy's main landing craft was the Utility, followed by the Air Cushion. There are only 2 submarines in service, both of which are Los Angeles class. There are many other ships in the Whirlpool Navy, but they all have the same mission. At all costs, defend the homeland. Naruto, sir. Sama has informed us that the incoming group has been intercepted and brought to Neo Uzushiahakure. An officer responded to his commander. The escort could be led by 2 Udaloy IIs in a Nimitz class. I'm also curious about the status of the Antonov in 225, which was supposed to arrive 2 days ago. Inquired the commander. Sir, the Antonov in 225 needed to do some rapiers, but they sent out 2 C-17 Globemaster III instead. They should arrive soon. The officer spoke up. All we need now are the supplies and equipment. With a sigh, the commander said. About 30 miles off the coast of Whirlpool country. So far, the Leaf Group had had no problems, and they were getting close to the Whirlpool's land. If something is up and running, it is most likely led by the Uzumakis because only they know how to get past the Whirlpools. As they got closer, the fog began to obscure their vision. Then they heard what sounded like waves crashing against something, and they saw the shadows of two massive destroyers. The two massive ironclad ships forced the Leaf Nin's ship to come to a halt. "This is Whirlpool Navy Naval Officer Kenshin Uzumaki. We've come to take you to Neo Uzushiahakure. Any aggressive action against the Whirlpool Nation will be considered an act of war. You've been warned," the megaphone's voice said. The group was taken aback, but there was another Uzumaki alive and well in this Whirlpool Navy. The group had no choice but to follow orders and be escorted. Along the way, they saw other vessels, some of which were massive with flat decks and cargo, while others were similar to the ones escorting them. Then they say whirlpools, but there were massive paths clear of whirlpools that allowed ships in and out, and those paths were heavily guarded. What are your thoughts on this? We've never seen anything like these ships before. They also appear to be far more advanced than Elemental Nation ships. Ichigo inquired. I honestly don't know. We'll find out when we arrive in Neo Uzushiahakure, Kushina explained. They soon came across a city. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was massive, with massive buildings reaching all the way to the clouds. They were made of glass and steel, the roads were paved rather than dirt, and people drove strange vehicles. The city was well organized, with its own police force to maintain order. It was unlike any other village or town in the Elemental Nation. People were acting as if the world's problems didn't concern them at all. They go about their daily lives as if there was no war. It seemed so. Come here. They'd landed on what appeared to be a dock, albeit a rather large one. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, some armored vehicles appeared. They came to a halt a few feet away, and with them came a few soldiers carrying strange objects. Hello. My name is Naoto Uzumaki, and I am the commander of the 2nd Whirlpool Army's 23rd Armored Division. I'll be taking everyone to Neo Uzushiahakure, said a red-haired man who appeared to be in his 20s. The Uzumakis now knew for certain that there were more, and that they were still alive. Naoto answered many of their questions as they boarded one of the armored vehicles. First, they discovered that the Uzumaki clan was still very much alive, with 100 or so members. They then inquired about the city and their military. They were told about the city and how it worked, but he only told them about their military, which he described as a modern fighting force. They noticed they were leaving the city and entering the suburbs, which seemed even more peaceful. The oddest part was the houses. They were always a mix of your typical house and other designs they were unfamiliar with. A few hours later, they noticed they were entering another city. This one was not as large as the first, but it was filled with nature. They soon came to a halt in front of a massive castle. Think of the castle in Kyoto, too lazy to explain what it looks like. It appears that you will be escorted by guards from here. The armored convoy then left the Leaf Nins to the castle guards. They were diametrically opposed. They appeared to be shinobi, but their gear was a hybrid of shinobi, Seimaria, and those other soldiers. They wore Seimaria-style armor, but had pouches for ninja tools and, like the others, held some of those strange objects. Their attention was drawn to the swords. It resembled a sword, but it was more mechanical. They had no idea what it was, but they assumed it was a deadly weapon. Indeed, it was. The swords they were interested in were saber katana. These katanas could appear to be normal, but when drawn, they appear to be covered in some kind of lighting. They entered the castle and made their way to the throne room. The castle was not overly decorated, but rather quite plain yet beautiful. They are now seated in the throne room, awaiting the arrival of the Whirlpool leader, or daimyo as they called him. After about an hour of waiting, the daimyo arrived. He wore a hat that covered most of his face, a red yukata jacket, a white shirt with some armor underneath, and complete black pants that also had armor underneath. So it appears that one of the Great Fives has finally sent someone over here. What exactly do you want? Naruto inquired, despite the fact that no one recognized him because his face was concealed and he used chakra to change his voice. Well, Daimyo-sama, we heard the Whirlpool country was back up and running, and we've come to offer a treaty that will make us allies and open up new trade routes. Kushina explained. The answer would take them all by surprise. I see. I'm afraid I'll have to decline. He responded. It surprised them a little. However, Daimyo-sama the Leaf and Whirlpool have always been allies. So, why are you turning down a new alliance with us? She inquired. Well, it's simple really, our once proud nation fell because of the Leaf, and our village fell because of their refusal to send aid. He said it with hatred in his heart. Plus, you'd abandon Whirlpool once more. Just like you abandon your own flesh and blood. He was done. The three Uzumakis gave this a wide eye. The other nins understood what they were saying, but they were unaware of the abandonment part. What exactly do you mean, Daimyo-sama? She inquired. Naruto grinned. Don't even try to lie. I know you abandoned your eldest son as soon as he could walk on his own 2 feet, I know you gave his birthright to the youngest, and I also know you refused to train him. All of this can get you disowned by the Uzumaki clan, leaving you alone with your children. Naruto said this while slowly rising and reaching for his hat. After all, I'd know, right mother? As he removed his hat, he said. They were all stunned. Naruto-kun, you're alive, and you've been here all this time? With tears in her eyes, she inquired. I was, indeed. I've spent the last 7 years building Whirlpool from the ground up into a superpower. Soon, very soon, the world will know that the Uzumaki clan exists, but first, I Naruto Uzumaki clan, head of the Uzumaki clan, Stripe Kushina Uzumaki, Kasumi Uzumaki, and Ichigo Uzumaki of the Uzumaki clan statues, and are hereby expelled from the Uzumaki clan. You must also hand over any and all Uzumaki scrolls, objects, and jutsu that you or your village possess, and the Leaf Village Small must remove the swirl on your headbands because it is the Uzumaki clan symbol. If these demands are not met, the Whirlpool Nation will declare war. You've got 2 weeks to comply. Naruto stated. You can't possibly do this. I am the heir apparent to the Uzumaki clan's throne. Ichigo screamed. Naruto turned to face him. Oh, you're serious? So, tell me, did you lead all of the remaining Uzumaki in rebuilding our homeland? I didn't believe so. The people here trust me as their leader, so if you took over, they would demand that you step down. As for you being the next in line, that's impossible because only the eldest can be the next in line, which would be me. The only way you can be the next clan head is if I die or give up my right to be the next clan head. Remember my demands as you are transported back to Konoha. He finished and then exited the throne room. The guards loaded the Leaf Nins onto AV-22 Osprey, which was escorted by 2 A1Z Vipers. The return flight was uneventful, landing in the open space in front of the Hokage Tower. Nobody knew what that flying thing was, or the other 2 that were still flying. When the Osprey and the 2 Vipers were dropped, they flew towards Whirlpool. Only Kushina, her 2 children, and Minato remained in the Hokage office after Kushina had dismissed the group. Kushina told him what had happened, which surprised him, but then he remembered what Jiraiya had said about the prophecy. It had always been Naruto. He was the prophecy's child. Now his son demanded that the entire Uzumaki clan be removed and returned to Whirlpool, or he would risk war. He wasn't going to give in to his son's demands at first, but an overview of Whirlpool's technology changed his mind. He realized that the Leaf was at a significant disadvantage when it came to technology. During the 2 weeks, a few Mi-26s arrived, some carrying troops to ensure that the Leaf did not do anything stupid. The others took anything and everything belonging to the Uzumaki clan, and there was a lot of stuff. The Leaf village was in uproar. Not only had any Uzumaki-related objects been removed, but the removal of the swirl had hurt the Leaf because it was their symbol that had been removed. Meanwhile, Naruto and his generals plotted. What are you planning for, you may ask? Well prepared for war. Iwa and Kumo will be his first 2 targets. He was going to hold these 2 accountable for the destruction and massacre of the Uzumaki clan. His strategy was straightforward. His navy would sail from the Kasumi Straits through Lighting Country and into Gaikatsu Bay. From there, the hidden cloud village was within his naval force's range, allowing him to launch landing operations while a second task force took over Frost Country. The hidden rock village would be a challenge, but after intense bombing from a few B-2 Sprits and 2 160s, they decided to use airborne forces. He'd heard about the hidden sound village, which belonged to the Ugly Snake, so he tasked about 20 B-052H stratofortresses with pounding the snake's village to the ground. Yes, there would be bloodshed, but this invasion would not begin for at least a month. He was waiting for a specific weapon to be prepared. A weapon so potent that even a tailed beast bomb couldn't compete with it. Naruto-kun, let's go do something enjoyable. When you are not present, it becomes extremely boring. Fu stated. Okay, Fu-chan. So, what do you want to do now that I'm done for the day? He inquired. He was madly in love with the girl. She, like him, was easygoing and full of energy. How about we go out and get something to eat? She said with a puppy dog look, no jutsu. Damn, I still can't resist that jutsu, he thought. Alright, Fu-chan, let's go. He stated. Fu jumped on him as if she had been granted a pass to Haven. 1 month later. Offshore near the hidden cloud village, 2 Yamato-class battleships are on standby, aided by a few missile cruisers for more accurate fire, as well as an aircraft carrier, but the landing craft and supply ships make up the majority of their force. The admiral is waiting for an attack order aboard the flagship. A ship message was sent after a few minutes. Begin the operation. Climb cloud, that was it. Without wasting a second, the admiral ordered the 2 super battleships to begin naval bombardment. Each of these battleships carried 5 of these massive turrets, each with 3 18.1-inch barrels. These were its primary batteries. Hell would rain down on the cloud village that day. The landing craft were soon told to begin landing operations, while special forces provided coordinates for missile cruisers to destroy. Forest terrain. The forest country was pure hell. The task force in charge of capturing it decided to drop napalm to burn out the enemy ninjas, which worked perfectly. The task force spared towns and villages, but the ninja sections were all game, and the task force showed no mercy. The landing troops quickly advanced towards the country's capital. Forest country lasted only 1 day. Earth's hidden village. It was just another normal day in the village, but everything changed when the sudden explosions began. They had no idea what was going on until they noticed bombs falling from the sky. They attempted to use earth jutsu to protect themselves, but the bombs pierced through the earth. This lasted about 3 hours, and while only a few civilian buildings were damaged, the ninja buildings were, for lack of a better word, craters. Then, out of nowhere, massive metal birds appeared to be dropping something over their village. The operation was called September Snow because the parachutes were all white and there were so many of them that it looked like it was snowing. Village of Sound. Orochimaru was going about his business as usual, conducting experiments on his test subjects little boys until his village was turned into a massive hole in the ground by a flock of 20 or so flying metal birds. All of his experiments and ninjas were destroyed. He had no idea how he had survived, but he thanked every god for saving him, not like any god would save him. The attacks on Cloud, Iwa, Forest, and Sound took place a few days ago. According to reports, Lighting, Earth, and Forest have surrendered after only 3 days of fighting. The first to fall was the Forest, followed by Lighting and Earth. It is also known that the Whirlpool Nation, now renamed the Whirlpool Empire, was responsible for all of these invasions. The elemental nations were taken aback when an island nation like Whirlpool attacked 3 countries on the same day and forced them to surrender within 3 days. Naruto now demanded that all countries west of Whirlpool Island surrender. Naruto didn't mind the eastern countries because they had been at peace for a long time. The western part of the elemental nations was the most violent. Inland countries like Wave and Snow, where Naruto had deposed tyrants, happily allowed Whirlpool to annex them. The high officials were then permitted to retain their positions in order to govern the region. Wind and Fire, on the other hand, refused to surrender. Smaller nations decided to form an alliance with Wind and Fire. Mist was pretty weakened by the Civil War, so it couldn't do anything, and the Whirlpool Navy would just bombard them to oblivion because Mist was just a collection of islands. Rice Country surrendered because Whirlpool had already attacked it and they did not want a repeat of the Sound Village. I can't believe Naruto has begun a 4th war, Minato stated. He took a look around the room. Leaders of small countries as well as Wind and Fire were present in the room. Do you realize, Lord Hokage, that this is your mess? Because it was your eldest son who started this mess. A nobleman responded. Yes, I am aware, but he will not listen to me. He is adamant about following this path. We can either surrender or fight him. Minato responded. They were all contemplating what to do next when Asamaria stormed in. Mifune-sama. The forces of the Whirlpool have invaded the Land of Iron. They are pushing back our forces on all fronts, he stated. Everyone was taken aback. The Land of Iron was Asamaria land, but it was one of the best. Even a ninja would have difficulty fighting them, and the Whirlpool forces were easily pushing them back on 2 fronts. We must send aid immediately. Before Minato could complete his sentence. No. Tell the Whirlpool forces that the Land of Iron has surrendered. We won't be able to win this war, Mifune stated. Everyone's face was flushed with surprise. How could Mifune give up so easily? But Mifune-sama, you're clearly joking. A nobleman responded. No, I am not. I've seen what their forces are capable of. At the very least, my people will be spared. He stood up and exited the room. Everyone was thinking very hard at this point. The enemy had the resources and forces to launch multiple large-scale attacks, but how? They couldn't have had this many shinobis. Then they realized that the enemy forces were made up of everyday civilians. They had never seen anything like this before. After 2 months. Many countries have already fallen to Whirlpool forces after 2 months of fighting. All counterattacks failed, though they did manage to kill some enemy soldiers, but the enemy changed tactics along the way. They were now employing a strategy known as blitzkrieg, or lighting war. Artillery and aircraft would weaken the enemy's defenses, which would be followed by land forces. First, armored tanks would smash through their linens, followed by infantry clearing any remaining resistance. Now, a battle group of armored tanks and infantry dressed in desert camouflage awaits us near the Wind Country's border. Sir, The order has arrived, and the operation, Iron Sand, is operational. A radio announcer stated. Tell the battle group to leave right now. Remember that the Sand Village is our goal. The battle group charged through the desert, kicking up dust. The sand ninjas could see dust in the distance, and it was quickly approaching them. They realized it was enemy forces, and before they could react, the armored tanks opened fire. Through the village walls, heat shells and armor-piercing shells flew. It was quickly followed by rocket artillery raining death down on the village. Soon, tanks and infantry patrolled the village, killing any ninja who attempted to attack. The Sand Village was destroyed in a matter of hours. The Leaf Village has had better times. It was gradually cut off from its allies by enemy bombers who continued to bomb their encampments. They have not yet attacked the village. Then came word that the wind had fallen due to the fall of sand. It didn't look good. Then, all of a sudden, a single helicopter appeared. It was a messenger, according to its markings. It landed outside of the village and stated that it was only here to deliver a device that would send them a message. After the device was delivered, the messenger helicopter and its pilot took off. After 4 hours, everyone was in the office of the Hokage Tower, staring at the strange device. It then came to life and displayed an image. Naruto's holographic image. You may recognize him as Emperor Naruto Uzumaki of the Whirlpool Empire, Elemental Nations. I demanded 3 months ago that you all surrender, however you chose to resist. I'll give you another chance after you've seen the Power Whirlpool command. The image changed to show a single plane flying high above the hidden rain village. As it approached the village's center, its bomb bay doors opened, revealing a single bomb. The bomb was then detonated and dropped in the heart of the village. What happened next was incredible. There was a huge explosion that was felt all the way here. The explosion was so large and powerful that it created a massive mushroom cloud. When the dust settled, they discovered the village had vanished. Everything within 50 miles had been completely destroyed. That is the power of the Whirlpool Nation. I offer you the opportunity to surrender while remembering that this is your last chance. If you do not surrender, more bombs will be dropped, which will be far more lethal. The holographic image was thus cut. Everyone was stunned, and many had lost the will to fight as a result of this act. Nation after nation soon surrendered in fear of extinction. The Leaf Village continued to refuse. Instead of launching another WMD, weapon of mass destruction, Naruto directed all of his forces to invade the Leaf through any means possible. The Leaf would have to wage war on 4 fronts. After 3 days of fighting, the capital of Fire County fell. The Whirlpool forces have now encircled the village. I'm giving you one last chance to give up. If you refuse, Hokage, what happens next will be on your head. Naruto stated. He led the invasion of the Fire Country, and now he stood before his former village and family. A part of him hoped they would accept his offer, but it was not to be. We will never give up. Minato stated. He gradually realized that his son despised his family and would never forgive them. So he was prepared to murder him in order to put an end to this madness. Naruto exhaled a sigh. Alright. His forces then unleashed hell. He'd issued a no survivors order. No one from the Leaf Village would survive, not even his family. After a full day of fighting, the Leaf managed to hold the ground despite being pushed back against the walls. The walls had crumbled. The enemy troops were merciless. They killed a wounded person they discovered. Nobody escaped. This was warfare. After another 3 days, the village's remaining shinobi were pushed all the way to the tower. the final line of defense. Naruto had directed his forces to retreat. The tower caught fire shortly after that napalm attack. The defenders inside were set on fire. It was left to burn. This conflict is now officially over. Commander, your orders are to secure this area and begin planning for reconstruction. Naruto stated as he walked towards a helicopter. Sir, yes. The commander spoke up. The war was over, and it was time to rebuild. After 10 years. It's been 10 years since the Fourth War, and the world is, for lack of a better word, peaceful. The reconstruction acquired lands was completed about a year ago. The Whirlpool Empire was now the single largest empire on the planet, as well as the most advanced. It had massive cities and unrivaled military might. It all started with a single experiment from another world gone wrong, which resulted in power being given to a boy, who used it to build an empire. Daddy! Exclaimed a young girl with mint green hair. Eh? Oh. So, what has my little girl been up to? Naruto inquired. This was his little daughter Aiko, who was very much like her mother, easygoing and carefree in every way. She even shared her hair color and eyes. Her mother was a carbon copy of her. Oh, nothing special, just her brother abruptly cut her off. Akio. You will never learn to prank again if I get my hands on you. Akihiko, her brother, spoke up. He looked a lot like his father, but he had some red and green streaks in his blonde hair. Because of his sister's prank, his hair was completely pink right now. Gaw. He discovered him. Dad, I'll see you later. I'm hoping my mother doesn't kill me. Then Fu appears out of nowhere. Oh, Aiko-chan, what did you do to me? Fu inquired. She was completely engulfed in the color orange. Both the father and the daughter burst out laughing. Why are you laughing, Naruto-kun? With a sweet smile. Too sweet, she inquired. Naruto remained silent. Oh, take a look at the time. I need to get to a meeting. I'll see you later. With that, he disintegrated into tiny particles in order to avoid his wife's rage. Not at all. That is a trick I have yet to master. Aiko screamed. His nanochips had been given to both of his children. Because they were also alive and in his blood. It evolved into a bloodline. Since the Fourth War, the world has been at peace, and life for Naruto and his family has been perfect.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.